Okay, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to our channel. We have our guest here, Susan. It's from blockchain and AI of your company. Can you is that correct or not?
Well, I've been working on AI and blockchain integration models since 2016, and how it started was that I have an AI company that I'm still working on. It's been 5 years. It took me 4 years to get to productization, so it's not like a quick startup. I met this woman in the women's washroom at the Web Summit in New Orleans. Actually, yeah, I think it was in New Orleans. I'm pretty sure. I said, oh, what do you do? And she's like, I've got a Bitcoin starter kit. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Right. And she said, what do you do? And I said, oh, I have an AI-based company. I'm working on NLU, NLP, which is natural language understanding and natural language processing. And she's like, oh, I want a chatbot. I'm like, all right, should probably cost you about 10 million. And she's we got along really well because women talk in the women's bathroom. And she's like, you should really work with me. And I said, I don't want anything to do with this like Bitcoin stuff. No, but she's like, no, you don't understand. It's bigger than that. And it's really, it's going to, it's going to take over the world. And I just looked at her and went, okay. But I said, you know what? I really like you. And why don't I run you through a business model canvas and look at helping you structure it as a business or as a startup company. And so I worked with her for like 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours in a single day. We just sat down and she would tell me her ideas and I would help her organize it. I was like, well, where does this go? I think this goes in resources, this goes in channels, this goes in revenue streams. And, that can go in partnerships. And I just helped her organize it so that she could write her white paper on what later became a platform for women called Crypto Vixens. And she was nice enough to call me a co-founder on it, even though I just helped with the concepting and the ideation in the early stages. And so all of a sudden people thought I was in crypto, but the whole time I was really mostly in AI. And then she kept messaging me and sending me links to read and YouTube videos. And I'd get this random text message at like 2, 4, 5, 6 in the morning. She's like, I'm buying this, buy this. And I'm like, huh, what? I never really listened to it. And then you find out later that it did like, 1000x. And so my boyfriend at the time, I told him, like a week after she sent me these text messages, I'm like, oh, she said to look into this. Can you look it up? And she's like, holy shit. Next time she tells you to buy something, tell me.
Yes, exactly.
But then 3 months later, as I was like sitting up in bed and I was like line by line coding, putting in Excel spreadsheet, my set of classifiers for my training corpus. And it's very painstaking work. 3 months in, I had maybe like a few thousand lines, which is like really like not a great deal because I still had to, jig them. And one day I just sat up in bed and said, holy shit, I could crowdsource parts of this, at least the validation part of my training corpus. And then from that point, I just like read and watched everything that I could get my hands on blockchain. So at that point, I still wasn't convinced about crypto, but I'm like, but blockchain. I said, blockchain has a chance of bringing transparency to systems and to equitably distribute capital and governance. And that to me was super exciting.
Right? Yeah, I mean, like when was your aha moment in the cryptos? I mean, like in 2017 or 2018, because there's a bubble back then, right?
Yeah, sure. At the time, there was actually around 2017, 2018, I was actually kind of embarrassed that, I thought I was in crypto or people thought that I was in crypto because there was like that ICO craze, right? And every ridiculous project with probably pretty much the same wording just went on to raise like millions of dollars. And even the ones that did raise, you know, like IOTA and, you know, EOS that, you know, went on to raise billions of dollars, they never actually ended up building anything. So I was like, what is this? You know, for me, I started to realize coming out of it, it wasn't actually, I say 2019 or 2019 when we started to see DeFi protocols coming into play that I just went, yeah, duh, crypto, yes. On top of blockchain, crypto has a way of actually efficiently distributing power and capital to people because now we have interoperability. Now it makes sense, right? All the systems that we talked about in 2016 is actually, we're able to actually realize it now because of DeFi protocols, because of that interoperability and the ability for shitcoins to have liquidity. So, so very late in the game, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the same thing, but different name. You know, I don't know. Maybe some people try to, yeah, solve that any kind of issue that related to that. But yeah, but only time will tell. We never know about the technology, right? I mean, the technology is also is part of speculation in it. So yeah, that's the way to measure the technology. I mean, like since you mentioned like your what is called work in AI and blockchain, and you also get into crypto since 2016. And then, yeah, I mean, like you also in your company working, the blockchain itself is working for SDGs. Right? Can you share a little bit more about that, about the
Oh
what
yeah,
SDGs would look like?
yeah,
And
sure.
that's it. Yeah.
Sure. So in 2016, when I realized that I could crowdsource and incentivize crowdsourcing my training corpus by having people basically validate data, you know, on their handsets and being able to incentivize that action with crypto, I, you know, kept working at it. But every solution that I found really didn't do anything to solve the problem that I was trying to solve. But at the same time, other people seem to find it interesting and useful. And so when there was a working group that later on became a nonprofit called Blockchain Commission for Sustainable Development, uh, um, we're holding small group sessions of like maybe 12 to 15 people of community leaders, represent. Okay, so yeah, back in 2016, when I had just launched my AI company, Mucker, and I started working at integration models for very task-specific things of what I wanted to do. Every kind of solution in trying to figure out the design of that platform uh, didn't really work for what I wanted to do. The technology quite wasn't there yet. But my models were, I guess, useful to other people, and people found it very interesting. Other builders and funders and people in the space that were starting to look at, you know, what was really needed in the infrastructure, and um, and so I was invited to join a like these small working groups of 12 to 15 people. And each one was reflected a part of the ecosystem that we were trying to build, whether they were funders, founders, various technologies with a library of SDKs. And, you know, the first one was held at MIT, and it was a question of, can we retroactively extract carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere, right? And the resounding answer by climate scientists at MIT were, yeah, duh, of course you can. And these are the numbers, and this is how you measure it. I'm like,
Yeah.
great. If you can measure it, and there are numbers to it, there's sets of numbers to it, then we could put a value on it.
Yeah.
And with that value, we can also teach robots to look for those patterns, right? And so that became very exciting. So then we thought, then the second round of topics was held in New York with some of the most active philanthropists philanthropists and nonprofits in America. And the question was, what is the future of money, right? What is the future of money, and how do we value the things that we say we're going to? And this was back in 2016. And so it was considered quite, new way of thinking. Now we hear about it all the time. Since 2016, there must have been at least dozens of really dumb, carbon tokenization of carbon credit projects that never, that failed to raise money and, failed to get failed to build anything that was useful. But we were starting to, think about those lines even back then 5 years ago. And so those small groups, they grew from 15 to 32. Then my partners brought it to the Office of Partnerships at the UN General Assembly, and effectively it was incubated in partnership with the Office of Partnerships at the UNGA, which gave us access to the buildings, infrastructure that they had, as well as a backdoor access to like 60,000 policymakers around the world. And we would hold these global summits right at the UN HQ to talk about things like blockchain, and say the word crypto, digital assets, and of course financial inclusion. And so those were exciting times. I mean, we had Nick Spanos, right, who's rumored to be one of the first original team on the Bitcoin white paper. He came to the summit. I asked Dmitry Buterin to come, but he said no because he hates the UN. But we had everyone from the Ethereum. At that time it was so enthusiastic. I called them the Ethereum cultists, right? Because it just didn't work very well. The Ethereum source code, Ethereum cultists to Bitcoin maxis, to everything in between. Whether they were OG, newbies, financial policymakers, investment bankers, lawyers, people who were genuinely interested in transparency and automation of these systems that could mitigate against politics and against very poorly designed governance systems that we saw in our modern world. So those were really exciting times. Unfortunately, the technology just didn't work very well.
Yes, exactly.
And so, so that took a few years.
So is that your company, like it's an NGO or your own project? I mean, like since you
no, it was
policymaker,
yeah.
right?
It was an NGO. It was an NGO, but I was one of 9 people that helped launch it, and I was, I guess a smaller group of people, 4 or 5 people that were helping to form and create these global summits and raise money for it and sponsorships and relentlessly text and message people to get them there, and to really try to hone the conversation so that there's so many very different ways that you can ask a question, and there's so many different excuse me, things that you can talk about when it comes to technology, right? And unless you're solving a problem, you're really just waxing lyrical. It's not really going to be very useful to anybody. And so, the challenge in those days was to define the right question, define it in a way that was useful to.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, the Blockchain Commission for Sustainable Development was a nonprofit and NGO that was incubated with support of the Office of Partnerships at the UN General Assembly. They grew out of like really small, very focused workshops where we would answer. The first one was held at MIT with climate scientists. And the question that we asked was, can you retroactively extract carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere? And what do those business models look like? How do we come up with a generative model basically and help people create value, put a dollar valuation on extracting carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere, I guess beyond carbon credits, but through actual different businesses. And so the technologies that were, the answer was a resounding yes from climate scientists. And there was an actual number put to it. And they said, yeah, pre-industrial levels of carbon dioxide were like, I think 20 ppms, which is how they measured carbon dioxide. And so what are some of the businesses that are doing that? And so there was a deep sea kelp, seaweed bed, and that seaweed farm that was underneath in the ocean could extract carbon dioxide, but at the same time, it also had industrial and cosmetic uses as a preservative, as a stabilizer. There was one scientist who had an Arctic forest with sensors in them to be able to measure and track the data for climate change. And that, of course, that data is very useful. And so, in selling that data to research institutes and sharing it, they were able to tend to those forests and look at reforesting those areas that were declining. And so I have a friend who started up an oyster bed along, in upstate New York, because well-tended oyster beds, not only are oysters delicious and in high demand, but they are also, but they also clean the water and the shoreline.
Yeah.
And so, so then the natural second question for the second summit, a working group that was held in New York, was, well, what do those, oh, I'm sorry, that's, oh, hold a sec. No, sorry, can you hold? It's my dog.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Continue.
Okay. So if the first question was, can you retroactively extract carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere? And what are some of those businesses that can help achieve this, right? The second question became, well, how do we help scale those companies and those business models? And what does the future of money look like? Which squarely brought us to blockchain and crypto. And so those talks were held in New York. And then they just rolled on and they kept getting bigger and bigger. More and more people came. They started at 8 in the morning, and we told people, and it was all voluntary. And they said, we said to everybody, you can leave at any time. We'll provide coffee and refreshments, but nobody left, and everybody stayed till like 7 or 8 the entire day, because that's how exciting those conversations were. So New York, San Francisco, and different parts of the world, and eventually snowballed into a global summit at the UN called Blockchain Commission for Sustainable Development. And we held 2 global summits once a year at the UN headquarters, where every part of the ecosystem of the very complex, culturally complex area in crypto, people came and they talked and they dropped ideas. And, it's so funny because looking back now, there were people who had 2 years later hit me up and said, attending your summit really helped reframe my work for me and my career, say, as an economist. Or there were other startups that were started from the conversations that were started at those summits. They said, oh yeah, you know what, my project just launched, and I want you to know I met my co-founder there. And we had when we started this discussion. And so I felt really happy about that. Because it's never, those things are never easy to do because they involve working with lots of other people in different groups. And it's about aligning those incentives, which is always a little bit tricky to balance and to do.
Yes.
So, so I was one of 9 people that helped launch it, and probably one of like 4 or 5 people who helped actually hold the events and raise money for it and sponsorships. And from that came a lot of opportunities to advise some really some interesting projects, and each one was a learning curve, right? It's kind of like, yes, I was in this thread yesterday, and of a DAO. It's been a DAO from day one of a stable coin called Stable Unit, and the Stable Unit DAO. And somebody posted this meme of a guy, like spinning plates. Like they had like 6 or 7 poles and they're spinning plates.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's exactly. And I'm like, yeah, that's the founder's dilemma, right? When you're starting out and you're wanting to go build one thing, sometimes you end up building another thing because it didn't work out the way that you'd wanted to, but it was useful to somebody else in some other way. And meanwhile, you just have to keep those plates spinning, whether that's the money or whether that's the legal compliance the talent, the entity structure, the capital formation. Crypto and starting a project and helping store them is probably one of the most complex subjects that I'd ever undertaken.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like at least like 12 to 19 different, you think it's like, okay, I think I'm going to build this useful tool, and it takes you down this like rabbit hole and eats your life in a way, because it takes you into everything from, like I say, legal compliance to capital formation to economic history to political history, governance, tokenomics, mechanism design, computing capacity, right?
Yes, it's a big, yeah.
To make things work and make things useful for all the stakeholders in a way that makes sense is a fine balancing act, because then you really realize people think tokenomics is just like the patent, the platform design. It's not. You're talking about the mechanism design within tokenomics, and those are all like little spinning math models, right? Finely calibrated spinning math models.
Yeah, it's more to it than that, because yeah, it's too complicated, and yeah, that's why people still not mass adoption, right? Because the people still have no idea to value this. Right? I mean, like how to grasp this technology, right? Yeah.
Sure. I could kind of understand that, but did you know in Indonesia you have more people registered on crypto exchanges than you have the stock market? You are the
Yeah.
fourth most populous country in the world, and there are more people who are registered to use crypto exchanges
Yes.
than the freaking stock exchange.
Yes.
That to me is amazing. That to me tells me that there's so much promise, and that people are motivated and self-directed to learn, and that people want hope, right? Why does crypto represent freedom and hope for so many people, right?
Yes.
It's the opportunity, or even just the chance of freedom and a value capture.
Yeah.
And because most of the systems that we work in today work on a purely extractive model, where you don't even have a crying chance of a hope, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are realizing that. Did you know that? I don't know what it's like in Indonesia, because, like I said, I was only there for 4 months, to work on that rainforest project. But in America, where I lived for 10 years, I'm Canadian. Uh, just by holding savings, because of inflation, you lose 10 cents on every dollar.
Yes.
Just by having a savings account. That means I can buy 10% less with the same amount of money, even though my salary is not going up 10%. So you make so little money, and the cost of things go up, right? And so people are starting to realize, like, what can I do, and where can I capture some sense of values, that if I'm willing to do the work, and if I'm willing to adapt and learn, what can I do to secure my value and my money and my sense of financial freedom.
Yeah.
And that's when it really, I told you I came into crypto through AI and blockchain, and I was all about blockchain, saying, oh no, I don't want to touch that Bitcoin, like baby buying weird stuff, like and the more that I worked on, the more that I worked on these systems, in advising and helping people store them, and making introductions towards their strategic partnerships or to raise money, I realized more and more, no, it has to be crypto. It has to be crypto. If that's the entire incentivization part. So that if I can pay people to do the right thing, then we have a chance of changing systems. And if you change a part of the system, you change the system.
Yeah.
And those systems make up the world.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because.
So
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I still advise companies. I'm still building Mucker, which is my company. And right now I'm in talks with a fully funded partner who wants to incubate the technology. It probably won't be called Mucker anymore. They'll take the underlying technology and fold it into a larger platform, which is totally fine by me. But I can speak about it more probably in about like 6 months. But meanwhile, we are looking at tokenizing a very specific plot of land in the rainforest in Costa Rica. We're not the only ones that are doing this, which is, I think, is fantastic news. There's other projects that are looking at different ways that you can use crypto and tokenomics to raise money, to continuously collect data on how to sustainably keep trees upright and to properly reforest rainforests. And also looking at what is the really true, what is the value of that, and what are the prices that the market can bear. Now, this is really important. What can the market bear? Because you'll hear about all these campaigns that are not tokenized and that are not data-based, that will say, we planted 1 billion trees, but they only spent $1 a tree. And if you spend $1 a tree, that tree's not going to live. It's not the right tree. You can't pay somebody for $1 a tree properly to be able to feed and clothe themselves and to do a good job of looking after that tree for the next 20 years that it takes to get a useful tree to extract carbon dioxide. Most of those trees will die, right? The true cost of that is $20. It's $20 a tree, and this is why, and there's data to back it up. And so this is the price floor for that NFT or for that token. And this is how we're trying to design systems. So super excited for the new year. I'm working with different, I'm speaking with and working with different technologies and major foundations of global multi-billion-dollar foundations in AI and in blockchain, who are interested in creating different assets of digital assets that can represent not just carbon and carbon sequestration, which is really hot right now, right? Because it's kind of almost like an easy mechanism in a way for different groups to go, to basically buy and sell carbon credits, and it becomes its own sort of industry and system. But you know what? I'm happy for it. Take that funds and use it to collateralize other forms of digital assets that actually reflect the true cost. And that's what, by that I mean clean and healthy water. We have numbers based from spectral satellite data that tells us physiochemically, by molecular level, what healthy water bodies of waters look like, and what healthy water systems and supplies look like that feed that feed from the runoff from the forest, right?
Yes.
How about soil? Only 17% of the world's planet surface has arable land, meaning that it can grow food, which is very important. And so there are ways that we could measure soil health and the different types, especially by rotating crops of the food yields that we can have, right? Yeah. I think it's universally acknowledged that hunger and poverty is not a resource problem. It's a political problem, and a problem of poor system design and poor governance design. Yes. And so, and so, what does it take to feed people? Like, what are the healthy levels of soil and water? And we can even fold into the overhead costs of these systems. How much would it take, or what would it take to pay an annual salary for each living person around those friction areas of land, so that we can pay them to enlist them to look after elephants instead of killing them like pests, right? To report illegal logging instead of being put in an economic position where they are doing illegal logging or cutting trees for their livelihood, right? What does that look like, and what does that cost? And these are the right defined questions that that digital assets can answer, because it's a binary and visual representation that's data-based of real world values. And now we're at a point in our planet where people are realizing that these are hard problems, and we have to do something. So in no other time in my lifetime, and I'm really old, no other time have I seen so many groups so motivated to steward the planet and to look at realistically what it takes to enlist people to help store the planet. There's different measurements that we can look at biodiversity. And it's not just pretty pictures of animals, which if it starts there, awesome. I'm so happy about it.
Yeah.
Right. I was reading this report from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF,
Yeah.
that basically looked at, did you know that a single elephant, when you look at the carbon sequestration values, because elephants knock down fast growing trees and
Yeah.
allows slower, longer growing trees that take up more carbon dioxide, they allow those trees to thrive. So one single elephant in terms of carbon credit value is $1.75 million that you can sell carbon credits on one elephant versus killing said elephant, extracting the ivory, that's $30,000. So what do you think makes more sense for your communities? It's to keep that elephant alive, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Keep that
Yeah,
elephant
yeah,
alive and keep it on your land and go sell some carbon credits for two people for the amount of carbon dioxide that elephant is extracting.
yeah.
And so what do those business models look like? What does the token design look of that? And you know, how can we design beautiful NFTs that reflect the market value of that carbon that's extracted from elephants, which are beautiful, amazing, intelligent animals to look at, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we'll be attempting to put a price point on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
like,
folding all of those smart contracts into an NFT. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, like, yeah, since you're working on a project and you're dealing with the SDGs as well, so you must be dealing with the what is called uh, ESG movement, right? I mean, like economical sustainable growth. I mean, like when SEG movement say that it's harming the environment, I think, yeah, it's only matter of time that people understand the value of the energy. I mean, like when you talk about the what is called Bitcoin mining, for example, Bitcoin mining, and
Yeah.
it is the have the direct contact with the Bitcoin mining because it's harm the environment, or it's not going to be good for the environment. But at the same time, it's the new way to capture the new energy. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I
Sure.
mean, like, do you have any
So
idea?
yeah, you know
Because
what? Honestly,
yeah,
I get asked this question all the time, and it's so annoying to me because if you look at two of the world's largest mining operations, like I mean, this was after China had banned like outdated miners. If you look at Marathon and I think Core Scientific, they just did a SPAC. They're like 60-70% carbon neutral, and they go to 100% by buying carbon credits to offset that cost. S19 miners are much more energy efficient. And if you're looking at BTC Core, there's Chia, which is the much more energy efficient, carbon neutral way of mining. Right now, I'm advising a group actually out of Dubai, and what they do is they capture gas flare, the energy from gas flare, and they're running it through a giant ass, like a giant, like electric generator, and putting them through mining rigs, immersion mining rigs to
yes,
mine Bitcoin. Yeah. So the technology is there. I mean, remember that. So we define mainstream adoption as 10%. It took us the better part of like 40 years for solar energy and solar panels to get to 10% adoption.
yes,
It's becoming now renewable energies and the spur of activity has made it almost a uh, common accepted norm that this is what we have to do. We have to build computing capacity and technologies that do what we wanted to do, but in a much more efficient way. Yoking the things that are here. I have a friend. I have a couple of friends working on the same project actually, who are attempting to rebuild an island in Haiti,
yes,
in a part of Haiti, and they're looking at everything from kinetic energy, which is like these hand pulled cords for electric generators, to I guess it's the same form of kinetic energy, to harnessing wind, the harnessing the sea. And they're building out infrastructure, building their own ports, their own airport, their own roads. And so a lot of these places that, you know, we think about as not being very built, uh, there are those of us who see a beautiful canvas that's ready to be filled that can skip a generation or two in some of the mistakes that we made in renewable energies and to build that in. So if someone tells you that Bitcoin mining is not energy efficient, tell them they're behind the times and send them some links. Tell them to Google it. Energy efficient Bitcoin mining rigs, energy efficient renewable energy, because those data centers are being built.
Yeah, because so many energy that's even before the Bitcoin mining is invented. I mean, like there is no way to capture the monetize, right? I mean, like for example, volcanic mining. We never had that before. Right? I mean, that's the Bitcoin energy, like we'll be doing it in El Salvador right now. I think it's quite inventional thing. I think, yeah, that's why I tend to agree what you said before. That's why people tend to, yeah, maybe they have no idea what this technology is all about. But yeah, this part of the process that
do you remember those mining rigs? Like I remember like looking at this thing that looked like the size of a milk crate. And going out and buying like cards and like nailing it together and then asking a friend like to help me, can you please configure this specialized software and load it on. And it was really like tricky, and it was really hard to get working. But it's evolved so much more than that now, because now you can buy like completely made mining rigs, right? I wouldn't suggest buying them off of eBay. I suggest buying them off people that you know, or a friend of a friend. But
yeah, exactly.
They're ready-made kits. And if you really want an energy efficient BTC core, yeah, mine Chia. It's awesome. You can mine things that are much more energy efficient, that takes very, very small amounts of energy. I have no idea what the coin price would be, but I understand that Neo is really great to mine and takes little amounts of energy. There's all sorts of different things that people can research according to their risk profile and what they hear about. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of coins. I can't possibly keep up to know everything that's going on. I could run you through like my metrics to try and figure out, whether it's really real. Or not. It's very important. I think it's really important to let people know that there are a lot of scams. When you have a novel data structure that is a virtual machine that turns into value and and can be transferred or translated into money of sorts, it's really important for people to know that there are a lot of scams, that you need to do your due diligence and your own research. Join the Telegram threads in the communities to look at what type of things that people are talking about, what are the type of things, issues that are coming up that real people are discussing. Go look up their GitHub repository to make sure that you look at that they're making regular commits to their code base. Yeah, and just randomly Google search them, like every once in a while, every week or so, just to see what pops up. And it's really important to be active in those public threads.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a part of mining. I mean, like, yeah, since you mentioned before about, you dealing with the what is called policymaker and the stakeholder. What was the hardest part for you to regulator to understand? I mean, like maybe some regulator already understand what the technology is all about. But at the same time, they don't want to lose power. I mean, they want to lose power. So, yeah, it's I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I spend a lot of time. I guess I've been called like a technology ambassador of sorts, because I get seemingly disparate groups together in a room at my behest to actually talk together, whether that's a strategic partnerships between two different projects, or it's different sort of groups that like are on different chains, let's say, to be able to come to sort of like a bridge in a way. There's a thing called, what people talk about rights. underneath that, dovetailing that is a thing called responsibility. And when we talk about power, the same thing applies to what's called legitimacy. Legitimacy is the recognized, I guess, the recognized value of how judiciously and equitably you use your power, and that so that people naturally want to give you that power, and right. And so when rights and responsibilities don't walk hand in hand, and power and legitimacy don't walk hand in hand, there tends to be a latency and a breakdown in the exercise of those rights or those powers, right?
Yes.
And so there's a lot of systems. I remember even from like 3 years ago, just before lockdown, being invited to speak. And keep in mind, like, I'm a self-taught person, about these technologies and financial centers and legal structures, but invited to speak with research arms of central banks, to sit down and speak with them. And that to me was mind blowing, because it showed that that they saw the validity and the value in the technology and the working state, and the changes that it could affect in the systems that everybody could recognize, and that they wanted ideas. So even within those behemoth power structures, even though they seem uniform, that every culture has its own internal logic, and that even within centralized power bases, there's always going to be within them legislators with vision, people who want to see things change and become better to serve more people. And it's not like a monolith. And so when we speak about real projects, and the more we talk about the way that they're being used to gain value for everybody, right? Because governments are also cash strapped. COVID hasn't been kind. It's been an equal opportunity asshole to everybody. I'm pretty sure, right? When you see the amount of value and just the excitement and the productivity that these systems can elicit, even within those groups, there are people who are listening and learning, and wanting to yoke its power. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it's exactly the case, because when the government implements such a rule, it's a required force, right? I mean, that the technology is not require force at all. So that's why whatsoever. So that's why some people tend towards technology rather than the government, because I don't know, they don't trust the government at all or not, but I think the part of the technology is there, and then the people recognize the potential.
I don't think there are very many people anywhere in the world that really trusts or like their government, unless it's a small state, and if the government is working and they are serving people and they're serving systems that make sense for people, nobody ever talks about it, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's like email. If it functions and if it functions like email and it's doing its job, then nobody would really talk and think about it. And that's the way it should be, because they're service providers.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah. And so, of course, people are going to trust the technology and data more over governments, because the technology doesn't even need to explain itself. It just serves, it works.
Yeah, I know. So do you think that it will make our government obsolete, or no? It's just the way it is, or the government doesn't want?
So this is the thing, is that, I grew up, I spent most of so I was born in Korea, which was a benevolent military dictatorship up until 1988. We didn't have democracy until 1988. Consequently, by the way, Korea tends to be like one of the biggest crypto markets in the world, no matter what government says or does. And remember that when digital assets first came on, this was pre-Bitcoin in 2001. In the early 2000s, pre-Bitcoin, there were digital assets. And they were sending people to jail and shutting down bank accounts, just like they are doing to people more recently in medical marijuana, right? And they've been doing this shit for like 40, 50 years. You cannot shut down a decentralized protocol. If remember what I said, that there's this fine dance between power and legitimacy that happens, right? And if the power structures then lose that legitimacy and that trust of people, then people will always engineer ways of surviving and transacting and doing. Yes. I'm not advocating for it. Please don't.
But yeah, it's your opinion.
But what I'm saying is that there's always
it's not right or wrong. It's just your opinion.
Yeah, no, it's just people will always figure out a way. You cannot shut down a decentralized protocol. Yes. And people will always find, in like innovative ways, technologists, rock star, mad scientists, artists, hustlers, people who want to build and people who want to transact, and people who, are smart enough to learn, adapt, and willing to do the work will always figure out a way to survive and to gain value for themselves. And that's just the way it is. And hopefully they do it with minimal harm to themselves and others around you, right? And and these systems, basically, where the global economy really failed people, right? Because I think we can all say that the global economy has completely, really disappointed people shockingly. It doesn't matter whether you are a small nation state or where you are a laborer in a Southeast Asian country. We can all say that the global economy has pretty much failed us all soundly in rewarding and allowing people to keep value for themselves and to support innovation and entrepreneurship, even when people do want to learn, adapt, and work. To me, that should only be the litmus test. If you're willing to learn, adapt, and do the work and work hard, then why shouldn't you have access to the global economy? And why shouldn't you be able to create things? Right? Why shouldn't you have access to capital, intellectual property and social capital, so that you can help build bigger and better things and teach other people and hire them to help you build bigger and better things? Right? It makes total sense. Let the markets decide, right?
Yes, exactly.
But if that doesn't exist, or that's not being allowed, people who like this kind of thing, like you and I, will always figure out a way to build somewhere else and build something better. And it'll be so cool that we'll bring other people with us, and it won't matter where we live, in a way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the power of decentralized. You cannot rely on a central entity. So I agree with you, because people tend to agree with the technology adoption, no matter what race or what background. Yeah, it's pure invention. That's why I
everything is a construct. Once you look under, I remember thinking, in my 20s, right? I try to work for the biggest and the largest corporations. My courses and my education, and I could store up on my Rolodex, because I always knew that I couldn't work for anybody. I mean, I'd always quit within a year or two after I'd, figured, learned as much as I could and rolled up, stacked my Rolodex. But every place that I worked at, I could see deficiencies and gaps in the system where things just weren't running efficiently, where it was losing the brightest and the best working people that weren't being valued correctly. The right behaviors and attributes and events weren't being valued properly, so that it created a really toxic environment in most of the places that I worked for. And that, to me, became sort of like a microcosm of the world. And if we can properly design smart systems to align the right incentives, to pay people to do the right thing, to transparently show how their efforts were doing the right thing,
Yeah.
and to pay people for it,
Yeah.
then I think most people would want to do the right thing, whether that means cleaning up beaches, you know, planting trees properly, cleaning up roads, putting in sewer systems, looking at energy efficient ways, teaching their children and sending them to school,
Yeah.
right? And so those are the systems that we need to build because the technology is there,
Yes.
right? The technology is there, the data is there, certainly the capital is there now because people are urgently worried that the world is going to come to an end.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
So we have to
only
start
time will
thinking
tell,
big.
you know. Yeah, it's only a matter of time, and I think I agree with you because yeah, that's the you know, the way the technology adoption works. Yeah.
Yeah, I promise you, it's not just someday, it's happening now. I know because I'm not the only one that's working on this stuff, and I'm certainly not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the richest guy in the room, and I'm definitely not the most skilled in the room. But we're having conversations and we're doing work every day to help design better systems, to raise money for them, to enlist as many developers or work with as many technical talents and marketers to really talk about how, you know, I'm working on like a half dozen projects right now.
Exactly.
One is, yeah, like one is a stable coin, it yields in your wallet,
Yeah.
right? Basically, you can borrow it by collateralized by whatever crypto that you own, and then it's called stable unit. You can borrow a stable unit, and it's moving money on chain that that people who like to speculate can move freely across different chains and trade with. But if you're not technically adept, like I'm not a trader, right? I can't do that. That stuff scares me. Uh, you know, if you're not a trader, just by it's non-custodial, which means that just by holding in your wallet, you recognize fractional little stacks of other stable units that yields in your wallet. So you
Yeah.
don't have to do the yielding and farming yourself. So it's
Yeah.
good for every level of technical knowledge and expertise. It'll be ready for mainnet. I'm working on an NFT project called Hangry Animals. It's an IP play to a 3D animated movie. So if you come in on pre-sales, you get these creative of hangry animals, right? And you have to use the utility token in a 3D video game to train your hangry animals for the audition, right? Whether that's singing, acting, doing stunts, and then the audition. And then if we pick your NFT character to be in the movie, in the 3D movie, then we have to pay you royalties and rights
Yes.
for your character being in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the NFT. Right? I will share the
Yeah,
link in the description. Yeah, if you
yeah,
want.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
And so,
it's
and we still have to, yeah, and we still have to do the auction. So part of the proceeds from that, the auction that we're holding, it was supposed to happen in Miami, but the Miami authorities really completely like screwed us over and moved the yacht party 1 hour north of Miami. So it's just, only like 100 people came. So we decided to hold off on the auction. But the net proceeds from the auction is actually going to Mason Elephant Park, where they have 30 of the last remaining 800 Sumatra elephants in Bali.
yes, exactly. Yeah, but
So digital animals can feed real life elephants and animals.
yeah,
But if you have a chance, please go check out SaveBaliElephants.org.
yeah, I will share
They're
the
doing some
link.
amazing.
Yeah,
They're doing amazing with this. Yeah.
that's
Um,
the sorry.
Yeah. So of course the project that I'm like really the most excited about is the tokenization and datification of actual in real world rainforests and for the creation of different asset classes, valuing not just carbon but water, soil, and we're having actual talks and there's actual funding that came in. I can't name them right now, but there's a group that that I'm currently talking with, and they've sold probably in excess of $40 billion in carbon credits, and they wanted to put that money and deploy it into sustainable programs for people, planets, and all living things to notify and follow through. So we're in the planning stages. So this isn't just talk. It's not. This is my everyday,
Yeah,
and there's
exactly.
hundreds, if not thousands, of us that are working on stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I agree with you. So yeah, I will share the description about it. Yeah, because it's already 1 hour. I need to wrap this up. I would like to talk about your maybe the second part is when Bitcoin reach 100K. I don't know, but yeah, before I close the interview, I mean like, do you have any Bitcoin price prediction? It's just for fun, not financial advice. It's just for your self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, like, where Bitcoin decided? I mean, like, 100K, or you have any specific Bitcoin price prediction?
Oh my gosh! You know what? Nobody should ever listen to my financial advice. This is
No, 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 no,
not
no. It's
financial
just for
advice.
fun. It's just for fun. Yeah, it's
But
just.
I think we've had such an amazing sustained bull run for like the last like over 2 years that I think everyone is just sort of like eyeing the markets, and it's going to do one last hard push up, and it's going to go up, and then I think we're in for a winter, like probably maybe by February, March. I think that's what everyone is kind of anticipating. But I will say the NFTs and the tokens that have utility, they may dip in price, but they'll have enduring value because they're useful, right?
Yeah.
Because they measure a transactional value that no one else has really thought of and designed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you don't have any like specific price, I mean like 200K, 100K, or what? I don't know.
No, you know what? I thought it was going to, honestly, I thought it was going to go to like 125.
Okay.
Yeah, before like, but it went nowhere near that. Again, proving that nobody should ever listen to me
No, 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 no.
about
It's not about like I think it's just a disclaimer of my advice. No, yeah, it's up to you if you have any
I don't know
expedition.
yeah, what is the price of Bitcoin now anyway? What is it at?
40, around 40-ish. Yeah, 40, 50-ish. Yeah.
40, 50K? Wow. You know what? That's really not bad. That's really not bad. I know everybody was going, it's going to go to 100K. It's going to go to 125. But
Yeah.
I still think that we have at least a few months, at least 2 or 3 months
Yes.
of a bull run. Yeah. And who knows what's going to come around the corner. That's the one thing about the space. It's just endlessly fascinating, endlessly
Yeah,
fast
yeah,
moving,
yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah.
changing so much. Like I seriously think that with all the carbon credits and the tokenization and NFT projects that are looking at conservation and planet stewarding might actually keep it running, might actually keep fueling the bull run for a bit, because
Yeah.
I don't see a stop to the projects that are coming online, and there's so many cool things that are coming. Uh, but it takes me hours to do due diligence to check out a new project, you know, because there's so many different things to look at, like, from the founders to the tech to the system to the language that they use, where are they located? Are the founders docs? Are they doing regular GitHub repositories? Are there Telegram threads and Discord and Notion threads actually active with real people and not just like some weird Chinese bots? Right? Like, there's so many things to factor in. It takes me like about 4 to 6 hours to actually vet
Yeah.
a project. But when I think about the imagination of what these systems can and what some of them verily do, it's so exciting, right? So yeah. So who knows? Maybe Bitcoin will hit 100K. I
Yeah.
doubt it though. I don't know.
Yeah, only matter of
But I
time.
think
We never know when, but it's gonna be there. But yeah, only
do
matter of time.
not, yeah, do not try to time the market. There's no
Yeah,
way that it will
never, never.
it'll
It's
just
totally
happen.
clear, Don't try to time the market. You're gonna probably gonna get wrecked. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Look
Yeah.
at DeFi protocols. Hey, actually, did you hear? I don't know if you heard this, but like Aave, I forget what it was called though. I think but
It's
Aave had put out a protocol that allows you to collateralize your
yeah,
crypto
I know.
trades with
Yeah.
real world assets. I mean, right? Because that's what we were talking about 5 years ago. Like, how can crypto unlock liquidity of hard assets?
Yeah,
That was
some rich people are doing that because I don't know, they don't want to pay taxes. So, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. It's when you collateralize your asset is not taxable event, right? Because you're not selling anything, you're not liquidating anything.
You're not selling anything. You're just borrowing against
you just
it.
borrow things, and the prices go up, and yeah, that's the richer get richer, you know. Yeah.
Yes, partially, but think of it this way, right?
Yeah.
Look at it this way. No matter what your perceived wealth position is, if you're not liquid, it really isn't, it really isn't so. You could be looked at as rich because you've got a huge house, but if your giant ass house is empty and you have nothing to keep the electricity lights on and to feed yourself, you're really not that rich. You just have a whole bunch of assets.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
It's all about flow.
I mean, it does.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you can borrow against it, that's great. I want everybody, no matter what they have or what they don't have, to learn about yielding and farming and mining. Yielding, mining, and farming, fractional values that they can earn every day. And what are some of the ways that they can learn about, making, like, say, long swing trades, which I think are accessible to everybody.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because once you collateralize your asset, I mean, like, yeah, that's why some people, I mean, like, the richest person in the world, Elon Musk, it don't really have the illiquid asset such as home, because yeah, house is not liquid, sometimes we value liquid as a freedom. When you can move from place to place, it's a really freedom, right? I mean, when you said that before, it's not really asset, right? And when the house is not really produce anything, so that yeah, it just stay what it is, and then you it's like a liabilities, and then after that, I don't know, it's just part of the game when people try to use to build home, or to have home, or yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Well, see, this is the thing that's happening that's like super exciting, I think, right? Is that even without crypto and before blockchain, there was always that discrepancy between real world and what was on paper. What does a person, and what does a house, what does an organization, what does a country look like in the ledgers on paper versus in real world life? And now it's like what's digitally, what is a digital representation or the visual representation that is in real life. And crypto, DeFi protocols, gamification, and making the internet 3D so that we can gamify different things is kind of like really turning everything on its head and connecting all of those together. Like, all these worlds are getting smashed together. So no matter when the winter comes or the price of Bitcoin, I would hope that when the winter comes, that those protocols and those systems that affect lives and that touch people, that give people a way to be able to gain value for themselves, that can feed elephants, those digital assets that have real life effect will have enduring value, and they'll retain their value in the long run. If you just hold it for 5 years, I know it will go up.
Yeah, it's NGO technology. I mean, like, numbers go up technology. Yeah, that's the point of it. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the meme of it. I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, thank you, guys. I think that's it for today. Thank you, Susan, for coming in. Nice to meet you. It's been an honor to be here. Yeah, you guys, I will share the link about the NFTs in the description. And leave a like and subscribe to our channel, guys.